And then second, I was like trying not to cry because I was like in this middle of this academic environment, and like my heart kind of like sank in a good way. I don't know how to describe it, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening.
Hello and welcome into Suns Out, Stangs Out, Radio Western's newest summer Western Mustang sports show. My name is Alex McComb and I'm your host. This is episode number 4 of the show, and I'm joined by my good friend, Western flag football alum and a pioneer in the sport, Olivia Ghosh-Swaby. Ghosh, thanks for taking the time to be with me today.
I'm so happy to be here, and thanks for like capturing women's flag and all the things you talk about within the Western community and all of what they do beyond. So I'm excited for today's combo.
I appreciate it. So the U Sports announcement just dropped a few days ago, I believe June 3rd. There will be flag football starting in the 2027-28 season under the pilot status. I've known you for years now, and I know you've been working towards something like this for a long time. What was your reaction when you heard it was going to be official?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate enough to work with our provincial sport organization of Football Ontario. So I've kind of been involved in the process and really advocating for this behind the scenes. So we got an email coming in being like, heads up, this is going out in literally a minute, about the fact that it was added into U Sport. And I was like, oh my gosh, I knew like the AGM was around U Sport was coming up, but I didn't know that this announcement would come so quick, considering the application was back in January. And so when I saw it, I was literally away in like a random spot of Quebec, because I'm also a neuroscientist. So I was there learning and training for the work that I do. And then I'm on my laptop listening to talks, but also trying to see, oh my gosh, where is this news coming from? Where is it out? And then also collating all the data and information that we had in Football Ontario. So it was a combo of, oh my gosh, this is actually coming out right now. We need to be on the ball with this from an Ontario standpoint. And then second, I was like, trying not to cry because I was like in this middle of this academic environment, and like my heart kind of like sank in a good way. I don't know how to describe it, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening. And all the years and all the wait to see this kind of shift in the language of what flag football looks like in Canada finally came. And so thinking through all the processes, the no's, the yeses I got along the way kind of like sunk in at once. And so I was just like fielding in a bunch of texts and messages, talking to colleagues. They're like, I know all the work you put in, and it was time it was well deserved, and that this was finally happening. So it was just a mix of emotions, a mix of like also trying to do my job and communicating this with our fans and those who are in love with the game as much as I am. And then of course, like hearing the news and processing it for myself and for all the girls that I know that play the game. So
the 2027-28 season, that's, just under a year before the LA 2028 Olympics. Mm-hmm. The last time we spoke on camera, it was the fall of 2023, and the Olympic announcement had just made waves. Did the U Sports announcement timing for 2027 surprise you, or what has this always been the window that you were hoping for since the Olympic news?
Since the Olympic news, I actually didn't know where the future would be for this sport, still within the U Sport and the Canadian sport landscape. So the timing, I don't know if it was intentionally that way. I knew in the application process because of the leaders at U Sports when I met with them, and they were sharing what avenues or pathways that we could use to get flag football into the space. I just knew the timeline to begin regardless would have been a 2027 start. Just conveniently, it aligned with the first Olympics. And I know the sports that were also considered in this process are also some that are going to be featured in that Olympics. So again, I think it was good timing, but I don't know if it was intentional or something I expected in the time that we met in 2023. I knew it was coming. I actually hoped it would be sooner, but now that we're already there, I won't complain, but I think we can keep advocating for more from here on out.
With your role in developing flag football at Football Ontario, what do you know about how this will affect teams in the province like Western so far?
Yeah, so in the time that I had met with U Sport and understanding the application options and ways that we can move into U Sport, if I understand this correctly, and of course can be always corrected later, is that this P3 space or this pilot sports space means that teams are not required to hold or keep a varsity status. And in Ontario, most of our teams are sport clubs under recreation or kind of teetering between varsity and club. So that means they can actually keep that status. There's not necessarily any pressure to move forward unless the schools think that is the next logical step, depending on their funding models and their models within their own sport landscape within the individual schools. So it shouldn't actually change how schools operate. Maybe that does provide some funding opportunities that weren't necessarily there before. But in order to compete in that national championship that comes out of being in the pilot space, you just need to be approved and okay by your institution, but you don't need to be a varsity program to do that. We see it in other sports. So for example, I think tennis runs a similar model with the National Bank Open and also hosting kind of that U Sport Championship at the same time. Tennis is it varies. It could be a club, it could be a varsity sport. So really just on an individual school basis, that's how things change. So really we kind of go back to what we've been doing, keep advocating for more. Now schools see the future and they see a little bit of motivation to move the sport in a different angle within their club models or varsity models. And that means kind of go back to what we do best and now on a platform that can showcase the sport.
And from what you know about building a league, obviously you built OWIFA into what it is today. What are the major tasks that need to be figured out before that inaugural U Sports Championship even happens? Qualification, conferences, all of it.
No, this is a great question. So one thing that we have in place that makes this transition, I think, what sold it in our application and for why we can execute this well in 2027 to 2028 is the fact that we've been hosting, and Football Canada has been hosting, a national championship for several years. They've done it for 5 years now. It would be their 7th year by the time that this inaugural season runs. So hosting that national championship will come together. That is no concern. What each conference does, that is up to them. What I really think this helps position is encouraging groups out west and even on the East Coast to start formulating their flag programs, which have been missing, besides Saskatchewan having a really good, strong base, missing out in BC and in Alberta. So hopefully we start to see that form, and Manitoba as well. And so now that there is a platform and kind of a goal that these teams are achieving and moving towards and striving towards, I think that'll help get those wheels turning. Within Ontario, I think now there's even more of a push or platform that we can argue the sport can be under the OUA. Again, it comes down to what the individual schools are willing to move their teams in within that model I was talking about, a club sport versus a varsity sport. So it's super nuanced and it definitely depends on the conference. But now that there is this kind of setting scale, we have something to move towards. And if I'm not mistaken, this actually provides even more basis for the RSEQ to help with their varsity programs that weren't actually getting as much funding support, maybe more resource support, but the RSEQ programs there are recognized as varsity. Now they can move even further in the varsity models since there is a U Sport Championship, which is a requirement they have in the RSEQ.
And then talking about the OUA, what does this mean for the relationship between OWIFA and the OUA?
Yeah, I mean, I've been at Football Ontario for a bit now, so I haven't been within OWIFA in the last couple of years. There's some great leaders there that are working towards building out what options or packaging can be offered to schools to help with that transition to a varsity space. Now, the next step is really creating that conversation again with the OUA. So I met with the OUA in 2019, and that was the time that I was like, hey, look, there's this sport that's available. We need to start moving forward. We had a conversation about how nuanced it is and how it can be complicated within each of the member schools. But then I also met with their Women in Sport committee as well to talk about the sport. And they're just like, keep us updated, keep us kind of in the know on how the sport is growing. And so fast forward to now, it's a matter of having that conversation again and seeing if there's a space there to work with the different institutions to apply and add the sport under the OUA.
Now let's go back in time for a minute. What is your earliest memory of playing flag football? Paint me a picture of what the sport looked like back then.
Okay, so there's two spaces. So I grew up in the region of Peel, so in Mississauga, and we actually had flag football in high school. It was a varsity sport offered at my high school at John Fraser. that's the place where I really started in the game. I also had an opportunity to play in elementary school because the local high school always hosted a tournament for the elementary schools, and I loved it. So it was just like super raw. I didn't really know what was going on. I knew we had to receive the ball, we had to move downfield, and I just kind of played out there as an athlete, looking to just add another sport into something that I love and doing on the daily. Now, my second kind of switch over is, okay, I thought that was kind of the end, right? High school is where you get your chance to play. It was never a priority sport. I was a volleyball player. But then moving into Western and thinking back to my OG experience, that was like the powder puff space. Knowing what flag looked like then, it was a matter of like we were on an off-site field, we were practicing, we were just playing the game, showing off our skills. Not as technical as we are now, but that was back in like to age myself 2016, 2017 of like introducing what the game looks like in this hybrid model of a bit of contact and a bit of flag. And I actually didn't even know that the Olympic style, which it is now, this 5-on-5 style, would be the future. I actually didn't even know what that would look like. If anything, I thought it would have been 7-on-7. So 5-on-5 is very interesting, and it was a cool space to transition to. And then that's the style of the game I really fell in love with.
You know, I still remember when I was in high school, and I don't think we had a flag football team. We had a two-hand touch flag football team. We didn't have a men's tackle team, but I was the offensive coordinator for our girls' two-hand touch football team, and I remember there wasn't really much of a path forward. Like the recruitment for going from high school to football was always the men's tackle football pathway. And now there's, you see a lot of like Instagram posts about like, oh, this person has committed here, this person has transferred here. Especially with Ontario and Quebec schools, you see it all over for flag football. So it looks almost very similar to what, the OUA and RSEQ tackle football Instagram posts look like for that recruiting world. So that change has been very, very interesting for me when I was seeing that, 10 years ago and not seeing the pathway forward. But when did you first start trying to get Western and Ontario flag football to club or varsity status? When did that first, start popping in your mind?
Yeah, so that first came about, I think I was in a stage where I was like, okay, if I'm going to commit to this sport, I want to make sure that I'm playing at the best level that I can, and so are the women around me, because I think it makes myself better as an athlete, it grows the sport, etc. And the biggest gap was lack of communication. It became an access limit. Like we had certain schools that knew of tournaments that were coming up, and these tournaments were just hosted by the individual clubs at the time. You'd show up, you'd get information, and you'd attend. But then if you missed the information somehow, there were schools that would have had teams that would have come out that would have never heard about it or had a chance to play. And then the biggest thing is like these events were happening and popping up all the time, but no one knew about them. No one was getting involved. We had no volunteers. We had maybe the men's team that would come out and officiate. We had no structure. The style or the game rules changed at every single school or tournament that happened. There was no officials that were certified. Just a bunch of things that are just like, okay, we need to make this model better for, one, the safety of our athletes, two, how we can promote our athletes and advocate for them, and then three, just like having a really good flag football experience at the place that we'd be playing against each other. And so that was back in like 2017 to 2018 when I proposed with all the schools, and literally we had a Facebook page that doesn't exist anymore, but we used this Facebook page to be like, hey, like, how can we do this? How can we come together as a group? What would that look like? What kind of rule book are we going to use? Who wants to be involved? And then could we get a rep to get this together? So in that transition from 2017 to 2018, we basically got a bunch of student leaders. There was about 6 or 8 of us. A lot of them posted once this U Sport came out, and it was like cool to see them come around full circle that were a part of that first iteration. It was like, okay, what's our brand? Like we had a different logo and shield that I had created back in 2017, 2018. Since then I rebranded to make it a little nicer during the pandemic when there's a bit more time to work on these things. We crafted a rule book. We had all the coaches like literally go in, and review and say, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, this is a safety issue, how can we make this work? We decided on a field size, we created our Instagram page, we started promoting, and then really from there, it was a snowball effect. We took a lot of the weight and work off of the individual schools on hosting these events, and then we were like, okay, let's work together with each club and then reach out to the institutions about being a host location for our 3 tournaments at the time every year. And so that began, and it went into 2018, 2019, where we had our first championship coming out of a formulated season. We had we had player features, those kind of things happening on Instagram. Then the pandemic hit. I mean, that's life, and we adjusted. We started to find other ways of engaging people online in the sport. We actually had one of the probably actually our largest attended online experience of women and girls in flag football, in coaching, and in communications. And this was an online platform where I actually started to establish some of the relationships that I keep leaning back on now, including some really cool leaders like Phoebe Schechter, who does a lot of work out of the NFL UK and is also a woman on Great Britain's national team. And some of the other really cool women who went through the NFL Women's Forum. And then after that, that's when we restarted again. We were ready to get back. We were ready to play. And this is where Football Ontario also went through their leadership changes, and where I met my current boss now, Erin, who really has supported the sport and given us a place to adapt with what Football Canada would be doing and understanding that landscape. And so out of that, we started our first 5 season. We started with a tournament, and then it went into playing. I mean, like, there's a whole history here. And then it became a full season of 5v5 in the fall with our 11-on-11 season. Then we had our provincial tournaments that started under Football Ontario before I joined. And then those became qualifying pathways to the national tournaments that have been happening the last 5 years. So that was like the whole process. It was a matter of like someone just needed to take the reins and be like, let's do this. And we all kind of came together, and it happened over 2-3 years before the pandemic. And then we kind of got our structure and things rolling going forward in the same cadence and the same discussions to make sure the sport continued to grow.
And when did you first start believing this sport could actually become something supported by youth sports and also become an Olympic event? Was there a single moment, or was it a gradual feeling?
Honestly, I think it was the Olympic moment, like when it was announced. I think that kind of hammered in and say, okay, if whether it's the U.S. or whether it's Canada, if any of these national collegiate university leagues and associations don't take on this sport, they're going to be missing out, because look at where it's growing. And I knew it was inevitable. It had to be. Like it had to be something that the universities and colleges took on. So I think that was the turning moment. And then once we started to really develop our product it's not a product, but it is literally like the talent of these women playing and the style that they play, the atmosphere of these games, this festival-like experience, the way that everyone got more and more talented each year. There clearly was something here that kept girls coming back and all their friends and families watching. Like this is something that people should be investing in. And I understood that more once we got our first grant with MLSE Foundation under their Women and Girls arm. And so that funding said, okay, this is achievable and doable. Let's keep creating content. Let's keep showcasing this game. Let's keep getting more and more schools added. So like I said, we started back in 2019. We had maybe 8 schools at that time. And now we're at 13 different schools, up to 15 to 18 teams represented across those schools. So, yeah.
Now, around 10 years ago, flag football had another name attached to it. A decade and many transformations later, what does the word powder puff mean to you?
Yeah, I used to always give the literal definition. I was like, okay, we played in the snow, so let's just take that in. So that powder concept came from being in the snow. I also heard another thing of it being like, it's actually the makeup powder. So we use setting powder to do your face. And so that's where powder puff came about. But in the Ontario context, I'm pretty sure it really referenced the fact that we played in the snow, and it was like, it should be power puff, if anything, like women playing in the snow with all this kind of power. So it's a term of the past. I mean, I know it's used in some of the fundraiser events around cancer and breast cancer research, which is actually what started before my time in OWIFA, what it was shaped around. Laurier always hosted this kind of powder puff event for cancer research and support and fundraising. And so, yeah, so don't really look back to it, but I always like to say, hey, like I came from the era of powder puff. Like that feels forever ago. And there's so many women who were a part of that back. Like I'm saying this league existed on the backs of many women well before 2015, 2014. Like Western's first program started in 2012 with that power puff angle. And then teams had existed even before then. I think Laurier had their first women's flag football-based experience in the 90s. So it's like this has been around. It's just now getting to the growth it needs to be.
Yeah, I think my older sister, who was born in 1980, she played a bit of flag football in her day too, in the mid 90s. When you mentioned the powder puff kind of definition, that's what I kind of thought of, because it was always a winter sport for a long time, and I think my realization of it being maybe somewhat to do with the makeup thing was when I watched Friday Night Lights for the first time, and seeing that it was called that in the States too, in the southern states, where obviously they don't really get a whole lot of snow. So that was, part of their understanding of it maybe. But I always kind of thought it was the snow part, but it was interesting to hear about all the different perspectives on the word powder puff. But how has the funding for Ontario Collegiate flag football evolved since your first time at Western?
Oh yeah, from a Western standpoint, so we had some really awesome outreach coordinators in my time at Western. And so in like our first year of getting the club officially under Western, and we were able to get donations and funding support, we raised up to $8,000 to ensure that our club had the resources it needed, especially for travel and competition back in 2021, 2022. So that showed like, okay, it's actually quite a bit for a club, but that's what we need to ensure that we run. But it was always a pay out of pocket model. Like all of our girls, when playing in the sport, they paid out of pocket. We had a set fee to be a part of the club, and that is how our club functioned and ran. And then the extra dollars went to just trying to minimize that across everyone as much as possible. In terms of when I was at OWIFA, we had $55,000 that came from Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment Foundation. And so that funding support is what really got OWIFA to the level it needed to showcase athletes, hire videographers, photographers, get equipment and field support. Football Ontario was supporting like a little bit more at an arm's length at the time, but they actually, a big shout out to Emily Todd, she was someone who wanted to fully support and come in when she was at Football Ontario with Aaron and the team, and they would actually bring some of the equipment that we needed to set up fields if the schools couldn't provide, because it always was fairly limited. And then now as we shift into my role in these days, from a Football Ontario standpoint, we mostly oversee the provincial-based tournaments and Football Canada-based tournaments. And in that, we've been able to secure funding with NFL Canada, because they really are focused on the women and girls angle. So they give us money annually to focus on women and girls type programming, including collegiate, high school, and our tackle side as well. And then the Detroit Lions came in last year to also not just support our collegiate space, but add another pathway post-collegiate in the adult space. And so those two combined now kind of creates even more of a pathway to getting more of our athletes in the Olympic space, because they can keep playing lifelong, essentially, is how I like to look at it. And staying in sport lifelong is always good for physical, mental health, but also the growth of the game. So that is how things have shifted. And it's really coming from, in a collegiate university standpoint, those overseeing associations like OWIFA and Football Ontario that are helping build out the space and environment you're playing in. And the individual schools are doing a lot of work to fundraise and work with their girls to ensure that the programming on the fields actually happen in the way that they want and the training that they want.
You mentioned Emily Todd. She's a Western OG. I still remember when she was helping out on the equipment side for us on the men's team. And we share the same 2017 Vanier Cup ring. So I remember her from those days. I do have to ask, since we were on the same team together once upon a time, what's a funny or memorable moment from your time on the Western women's flag football team?
Okay, so there's two that I think of right away. So I was actually coming off of, I think in my last season at Western, where I hadn't dropped a ball all season. Like, it was something that I took a lot of pride in. And then, of course, like, this was funny because it became a little bit of a viral moment online where I was wide open on a post. Like, no one was downfield. And the ball was, like, perfectly placed by Miss Emma Valentine, who's, like, all-time best quarterback in Ontario. Anyway, so she threw me this perfect football. I caught it, dropped it, like, right through my hands of all the balls to drop that season. And it was perfectly caught on film by Jade Barco. She's kind of like the queen of videography, I find, in this space. And she made an edit out of it. And then everyone, like, who understood the season I was coming off of thought it was hilarious. And it was like, to this, like, you had these moments within this down moment. And I thought it was hilarious when, like, she made this edit where it was in color. I'm wide open, smile on my face, which is a classic. And then a dark, the black and white shift to just a drop ball. And I get down on my knees and I'm just looking up. It was an iconic moment by myself. So I always like to use those moments to show that no one's perfect in the game and that you always learn and grow from these moments. And then the second one was we were in the trenches in our away game at Laurier in the championship for the 11v11 final. And I think in my last year, we were down maybe 2 touchdowns against Queens with maybe 3 minutes left in the game. So me and Emma, like, as like vets as we are, we're on the side. We're just like, oh, this is how our season comes to an end. We're just giggling and laughing. We're like, okay, this is it. And this is coming off of, like, having a perfect season as well, in both 5s and 11s. So it's just like, okay, this is such an interesting way to end your season. We're laughing, we're joking about it. And there was just a sudden shift in the game. I don't know what it was. It was a missed field goal. And then all of a sudden we were out there again. And we had a chance to score in two scenarios within those, like, couple of minutes, and we ended up winning the game. And I think the reason it was just funny is just like if you could see how giddy and giggly we were, of like, okay, like, the weight of not having to win everything is off our shoulders. We're just, like, kind of taking it in. This is how it happens. Queens is a great program, so it was always good to go up against. It was, yeah. That was something that came with it. And then on top of that, in that whole game, if you ever go back and watch the film, that is also what has changed the landscape of women's flag in Ontario's having film. Is, like, I'm a tiny person. So in this 11 contact game, you just see me taking hits like no tomorrow in that game. Like, I'm belly flopping, getting lead blocking, or getting bumped off my route, and it was just funny, hilarious moments. So I think those two come to mind.
And as you went from player and president of Western's team to, I believe you were executive director of the whole OWIFA league, what was that dual role like?
Yeah, it was stressful taking on multiple roles, having to separate them, ensure that you're coming at things from an equity lens, and then also being, like, a student at the same time. It was a lot. Like, I was getting behind on my schoolwork, getting ahead on other work, making sure the team was running, making sure that OWIFA had all the things they needed. But I think what's nice is having insight on both what the student experience is, and then also being, like, a club organizer as well, is the best way to know how to support athletes at an executive level, because you're actually, like, in it. Like, it's hard when people come into leadership roles without actually experiencing what the athletes experience. And I think having that combined was really unique. So I always was sympathetic as to what the teams were experiencing and having to move through. I always understood the student athlete experience, and adding things like awards to recognize athletes that were student athletes and excelling really well in the game. So it's just all of those things, all of the many hours in doing that, and then trying to figure out where my future goes. Like, what am I going to stay in this space? Am I going to be a neuroscientist full time? Like, all those kind of things kind of came in, and then figuring out a way to carry that with me into all stages of life after. So it was worth it for my own development, my own experience. And I think I had a mission in mind of, like, really growing the game in sport. And so knowing that at an executive level within OWIFA, but also within the club and in other environments I'm in, really helped shape that.
And I did look at your LinkedIn page recently and notice your profile banner is from that U of T tournament we won back in early 2020 before the pandemic hit. When March and April rolled around, what was that time like for the league when the world seemingly shut down?
Yeah, I mean, that was an that was an interesting time. So the day that we went into lockdown was the day of our championship tournament. That's why the pandemic sticks in my head so strong, because I had spent the most amount of energy ensuring we had some sort of grant funding and the environment we needed for that event. And I was holding on to straws in terms of just trying to make sure that this thing runs until like the government said that wasn't possible. So like I'm sitting here, everyone's emailing me and being like, are we still running this tournament? Are we still running this tournament tomorrow? So thinking about like having these great tournaments leading up to it, I think we had McMaster and the U of T coming in. To think that this is something that might come to an end early was a hard pill to swallow. I think we also had a really great season that year from a Western standpoint. So it's like being at home for the first time, like, and hosting a tournament would have been incredible. And then like USC, like our University Student Council had supported us with about a $4,000 grant. We had a banquet set up for the first time. That would have been our first banquet ever, ready to go in Mustang Lounge. Like it was going to be an incredible experience right on campus. And then we had like funders from some of the car companies in the area and everything coming out, and food support as well. But didn't happen. I think it gave me a chance to like, okay, there's things that we can clean up in the league. We can do a little bit better. Let's keep working towards that during this pandemic. Let's see if we can create other opportunities besides playing in case something like this ever happens again, where these girls can keep working in football in other ways. So I think that's it. It was definitely a moment, but that I'll remember forever. And I also think I was in the best shape of what I felt like was the best shape of my life at that time, because it was like very regular cadence, and then boom, pandemic. And I was like, you're kidding me. So yeah, that was kind of all the wave of emotions happening in that season.
Now, tell me a little bit about London Legends. What is that, and when did that come about?
Okay, so the London Legends came about actually, again, right out of the pandemic. Like, I was playing football and as an undergraduate student, I would always go home. So I always had a place in Toronto to play flag football in my summers. It wasn't flag, actually. It was touch football. And when I was playing touch, I had a group that I played with, all women, some from other schools. Most were working. So it was like a cool environment to be in and play. And it was like different than the 11 style. So I also liked that. It was 7-on-7 touch. And my summers were great. It kind of filled that space in, gave me that void of missing football in the off season and then doing my work life in the summer. Now I knew that wouldn't be forever. So when I went into grad school, I knew my summers would be in London. So I was like, okay, how am I supposed to keep playing in my summers and not lose my mind without football, because I love the game that much, and build a program to allow us to do that? And so it started with a few posts on Twitter being like, I'm trying to get a team off the ground. Oh my gosh, that's a throwback yet on Twitter. And then I don't even think I use Instagram that much, but started on there a bit. And then we had like this first cohort of athletes, some that remained right to the end, some that all went into different places after, that played flag. That played touch football for the first 2-3 years. More recently, we switched into pretty much an entirely flag program in the last 2 years, 2.5. And so that's how it kind of came about. It was a combination of, I need to fill my summers. I'm also going to be in a stage of my life where I'm not going to be in school anymore. So what happens after, right? There's literally nothing in London for us to play. Like there's not even a league to just play in for fun. And I still wanted to play at as close to the highest level as I could within this space. So the Legends started as a program supported by like Bleska Kambumba came in at that time, really getting us into the level that we needed to be after my first year of trying to do it on our own, built out our playbooks and our defensive systems. And then from there, we kind of bought in, and all the girls that stuck around in the summer and then are continuing up until now. Like, we love it. We are our best friends now. So like, I don't know what life in London would be like without it, and without having that community that we built in the Legends. And we've kind of been this pool to train Western athletes in their off season. So they'll hang out with us, they'll work out with us, or train with us if they stay in London. But also as they graduate, and if they remain in London, many want to play with us. We also have adopted like other models to bring athletes back together or connect with people around the world. with the Legends. So we've had people from France play with us when we travel to US-based tournaments. We've had teams from, we're going to have athletes that are now out in BC, and actually in OG, you would know yourself, Olivia Gordon, who played when she was at Western 2, who will come back and play with us for some upcoming tournaments. And then we have, we've played with athletes in Quebec. And so it just kind of creates this whole like network and space that now when I go to travel to France, I've already connected with that athlete that came from France and played with us, Clem. She was awesome. And going to try to play with her in a tournament there while I'm on vacation. Like that's kind of what the Legends is all about, and creating community playing. And we, of course, are competitive, so we want to win as much as we can. And so we do aim for that, but we also understand that we are developing and growing ourselves as athletes. So it's just a really great place for community, player development, and having an opportunity to play.
Now, I want to go back to Football Ontario and your role there. You became the manager of flag development, I believe, a few years ago. Still finishing your PhD. What have you been able to do since then in your current position that maybe you didn't always have the power or influence to do in that pre-pandemic era, for example?
Honestly, it's been incredible. I mean, I've learned a lot. Like, I thought OWIFA was a lot of work to do, but definitely this one puts it up there. But it's so rewarding. So first off, being a part of a provincial sport organization that's a not-for-profit, we get more direction from government funding and support there. Working with Football Canada as our overseeing national sport organization helps us provide pathways and more direction for our athletes. And not only do I get to support the collegiate space, but I get to do everything. We're talking like grassroots clinics, coaching stuff, to high performance, our Team Ontario programs, and building those up so that an opportunity that never existed for myself was at the level it should be so that these kids can make a national team. Like that is the goal, that is the outcome, something to strive towards. Then we have the adult flag space. That was something I knew was going to be a future place that I wanted to work in. Because again, like the group like the London Legends needs a place to play. And many of the other women's programs that exist across Ontario and Canada. Then it was collegiate. It was like, okay, we need to build a pathway that lets our athletes play provincially and then move to and qualify for nationals. And then it's just connecting with the many amazing leaders that are building grassroots flag programming and club flag to a whole other level that I was never a part of before, and they've been super welcoming. I did a lot of trust building when I entered because it was a brand new role. So many wanted to understand how Football Ontario, that was predominantly seen as a tackle space, is going to develop and grow the flag space to the level it needs to be. And then some of the relationships and partnerships, especially with our NFL clubs, so like the Bills, the Lions, now the Raiders, and now the Bengals, like we can engage with them in a platform that I wouldn't have been able to do before. And so it's just like, it's like night and day from when I started to where we are now in terms of what we offer in flag and what we can do. And it just keeps me really excited and passionate about the game. And it did help me because I had a staff that was consistently there and able to support, whereas sometimes in OWIFA, they were all students that took on these or volunteer roles, so it was hard for them to commit. But then I have a group that has been really super empowering and able to support me in anything that I need to do to deliver flag, that allows for these events to be as polished and as well run as possible. So, I'm super grateful, and it's just going to continue to grow. And we've been able to do a lot in flag since. I think I host 10 flag events in each yeyear, the last 2 years. So 3 adult events, Team Ontario, we hosted Elite Nationals, we host Club Flag Nationals, we host Club Provincials. I host elementary school tournaments that I'll sneak off to and run in the different cities in Toronto and Hamilton. We have our high school championship and provincial championship that was just hosted this past week. And the list goes on. We have Collegiate. So you can imagine that it all piles up, along with all of our ID camps for TMO and then TMO trials. And the inception of the CCWF, the Canadian Collegiate Women's Flag Showcase, which might be a place that will become a national championship in youth sport. So lots that I've been able to do with Football Ontario.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about I know you talked about this a bit before too, about the partnerships that you've helped bridge. Football Canada, Detroit Lions, MLSE, NFL Canada. What have those organizations done to help develop flag football in Ontario and across the country?
So the two big things is, we can't do any of this without some sort of financial support. So that's the biggest one is we think at Football Ontario that we can do it all. And so we will put the programming together as long as we have the resources to do so. So financial support is a big place to start with. So all of those partnerships we've created have committed to something like that. And so that's a huge game changer. The second is their platform and brand. So carrying their brand into our events allows for even more reach and more connection between our members and these amazing groups that are committed to developing flag football. And that means they will become an NFL Canada or Lions or Bengals fan in the future. You know what I mean? That's exactly what we're trying to do. So those partnerships are really important in terms of that financial and brand-based awareness. And then they're also providing other kind of intangible resources or in-kind opportunities with sending videographers and photographers, collaborating on accounts, providing us with connections and other groups to work with, cross-sport work as well, with other provincial sport organizations. That's really important. So creating connection, creating a platform, and of course some financial backing. Now those are our bigger partnerships, but then there's a lot of really great groundwork with our partners at our different clubs and associations in Football Ontario. So for example, we have the Niagara Youth Flag Football League, who runs quite a big league that also supports programming and opportunities and tournaments there. We have UA Flag, who's trying to create platforms at the House League to elite to travel-based tournament areas as well. And then they've also supported us in executing and running these events. So if we don't have those clubs with us on the ground, we're a staff of about 6 of us at Football Ontario. So we need that ground support as well when we're in the area trying to run programming. And those partnerships are super important to do that. When they can extend to BMFA out in Burlington, to HMFF in Hamilton, to Ottawa Hawks and NCAFA in Ottawa to help us grow and continue to build the sport. So those are the types of partnerships we kind of develop, ones that kind of give us the top-down funding support and branding, and those that are giving us the ground-up support as well.
I like that NCAFA shout-out. I'm a former NCAFA alum as well, for Canada Knights for a couple of years, and West Carleton Wolverines back in the day before my Western career. But I just want to talk about, in the future, LA 2028, 2 years away. For the women who have been grinding in OWIFA and programs like it across Canada, what does an Olympic flag football game actually mean to them?
I think it's just another space to see one talented woman playing the game at that level. It gives you someone to look up to. I now go and watch film of the top athletes around the world to be this is some things I want to learn from them. I might play against them. How can I get better as an individual? So imagine what that'll do for a bunch of young women coming up in the sport. So that's the main one. We're seeing them on your screens. We're seeing them more everywhere, the women that have been in the space for years as well. The second is something to achieve and strive towards, right? You can now train to be on one of the best club teams in Ontario or Canada. Then you can now train to use that club team to get you the skills and things that you need to try out for an Olympic team in the future, or go to a collegiate program and ball out there. And now kind of that collegiate space is really the bridge of a lot of the athletes that'll then eventually make a national team. So this national team coming in is all were either former or currently RSCQ athletes or OWIFA athletes. So that's really important now that there's this pipeline and there's this kind of goal that you can work towards that will continue to inspire athletes or give them a place to stay within their own space and play the game. So I think that's what an Olympic level opportunity brings. And it's now never a question being is that even a sport? That drives me nuts. Flag football is a very skilled sport, and it's different than tackle. I agree with that. I think they could even be argued to be different sports, but it's now something that other people see the value in, and it has all of these skill bases that are unique, that you need the same kind of mentalities that an Olympic athlete would need, is training, nutrition, recovery, skills to perform on the field. So now that that platform is there, no one can argue that it's not a sport anymore. It's just a recreational activity.
And one of the main differences is the quickness. Like, I can't play 5v5 flag because of my size right now. That's not good. That's not going to happen unless they introduce nose tackles or something like that. I would never be able to be as quick as your group. But you know, after 2028 and also after I believe it's the 5-year pilot status for U Sports, what does flag football look like in 10 years?
I mean, perfect world. I've thought about this. I'm like, okay, what would the structure look like in our like youth space and in our collegiate space? So like, let's say we chatted collegiate. Like, I'm thinking that all of our clubs by that point are varsity, that they do kind of like these, because the game is so quick, it's only 40 minutes long, to really create a cool production around it is to do like 3 teams in one spot. So if you're going to have your league games, you're going to get 2 doubleheader games that you play in that day. You'd bring all the 3 universities to that one institution to have those games, and people can come watch. And it'll happen in pockets. It'll rotate that as your season. And then now you have a U Sports championship to play in. All of our conferences recognize this. They have a conference championship that brings in maybe the top 6 from within their regions to play and compete. To qualify top 3, let's say, to U Sports. So like, if I were to really build out the model, that's how I would look at it. In the collegiate space, in the youth space, I think we're almost there. We have our provincial programs. That's where we're really getting our hub of our national team members. So having elite tournaments, that's it. Tournament structure really works well for flag football. And then I can't speak to what might be in the future for us, but hosting some of those Olympic qualifying events and hosting Olympic qualifying events with IFAF, and that'll be a place where the sport will grow in Canada so that we can actually physically have it here. And we're tying in all of our partners as part of that, like the CFL. Again, things that might be happening behind the scenes that I can't speak to, but those are the things that we should be achieving for over the next 10 years to grow the game.
And what do you want the next Olivia Ghosh-Swaby, who is maybe in high school right now, to have available to her that you didn't have when you first picked up a football?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to draw back to my volleyball experience. I played with Packman Volleyball Club, one of the best in Canada, in Mississauga. And what we had were 2 to 3 practices a week. And we then competed at tournaments in our season pretty much every other weekend. And so I want to make sure that that former me has that exact same opportunity in flag football. Like, you get to go and play in high school, and we saw it this past week. Like, you could tell the girls that are playing club in this high school space, and it's always the best environment to be, because you just look so good. You are some of the best talent when you come from a club space. Felt that in volleyball too when I played in high school environment. And then you get to play in high school, then you get to play in your club space. Then you're now thinking about getting scouted. You're creating highlight material. You're able to share that with schools. And then our schools here in Canada are able to actually offer our athletes something to be able to play, like, and be able to afford school, right? It's another access pathway to get an education, and it's now another pathway to keep really talented Canadians in our Canadian infrastructure, which I think we're starting to lose now to the U.S. with the NCAA kind of getting there faster than we are, I would argue. And so that's kind of what I hope there is. And there's experts that can teach me. I can go off and do a receiver-based training session with a coach that knows flag. I don't think we have that yet. There's a rare few of us who know flag and how to translate the skills that you might learn in tackle to a flag environment and give you the specialized defensive and offensive skill sets you need. But I want that to be more accessible, that you're going to camps and you're able to do those things in that when I was in high school and at that age. So I think that's really it. And even when I'm younger, that I can literally name an athlete that I'm saying, this is my favorite athlete of all time. Like, this is who I look up to and I look forward to watching on my screen every day. It was like Serena Williams for me. It was a Shelly Ann Fraser. Like, those are the things that I want athletes to be excited and look forward to.
And just to finish off here, since Sun's Out, Stangs Out is a summer sports show, I want to ask you what your plans are for summer 2026 for both football and non-football activities you got on your agenda.
Oh man, everything's football. When it comes to being out in the sun, everything is football, it seems. We have a tournament coming up. So it's the last championship event of the Detroit Lions circuit. It's in Guelph. So if anyone's around Guelph and wants to come out to Eastview Park, a beautiful brand new park in Guelph, come on out, watch some football, beautiful weather. Then at the end of this month, we have pretty much what rounds out our season, Senior Nationals with Football Canada. That'll be in Montreal. And then we're looking towards planning our next tournaments with the IFLAG circuit in the U.S., including one potentially in October outside of our summer season. And then we go into LA of next year where they're hosting some events. Non-activities, I'm going to be disappearing for 3 weeks in Europe, so I'll get a chance to go for my academic background and attend a conference in London, England. But in that time, I'm also going to be in France, traveling France for a bit, and I've already connected with, like I said, with some girls in France to hopefully maybe even play some flag football with while I'm there. And then there's a bunch of programming on the plate. There's club provincials, club nationals coming up, and that's where I'm kind of turning my attention to in my Football Ontario job.
Okay. When are you going to France? What month?
First 3 weeks of July.
So you'll be there for Bastille Day?
Maybe. I actually didn't even process that.
I think it's July 14th, right?
Well, it might
July
be in London,
something?
England at that point.
Okay.
But maybe there is some overlap. But yeah, it'll be an exciting time to see the world a bit and still do work remotely. But yeah, get a chance to do some life things outside of football as well.
Yeah. I was in Paris for Bastille Day in 2014. It was very fun to see the fireworks at the Eiffel Tower. So if you get a chance to see that, that would be it's a fun time. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I will. I'll budget it in a day. Even in England, it's so easy to get there. It's like a 2-hour train that I can pop in for the festivities.
All right. Thanks so much, Olivia, for being on the show today. And I can't wait for 2027 and 2028, which sound like they're going to be some pivotal years in flag football.
Oh, yeah, it will be. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see what the game looks like then.
That's all for this episode of Suns Out, Stangs Out. Big thanks to Olivia Ghosh-Swaby for stopping by. I'm Alex, telling you to keep the heat up and the hooves running. We'll catch you next time on Radio Western.